I'm International Living Overseas Editor Jessica Ramesh. Welcome to the Zen of International Living, where we discuss the ways in which international living or an international mindset can impact your well-being and enrich your life. Today, I'm coming to you from my hometown since 2005, Panama City, Panama, which is located in Central America. And joining me are two expats who are also colleagues of mine. International Living has correspondents across the globe, and Marsha Scarbrough is one of them, a former assistant director of films, journalist, and author of several books, including Inside Breaking Bad and Medicine Dance. She lives in Europe, in España, beautiful Spain. Thank you so much for joining me, Marsha.
A pleasure. Always nice to chat with you, Jessica.
Oh, wonderful. And from a country that in many ways looks and feels European, but is actually a South American democracy, known as one of the most socially progressive countries in the world, by the way. We have David Hammond, a writer whose resume includes everything from boat captain to real estate investor. So great to see you, David.
Thank you, Jessica. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And before we get to our main topic, would each of you maybe just give our listeners a little bit of background information, whatever best illustrates why you chose to live where you're living? Marsha, can we start with you?
Well, in the housing crash of 2008, I pretty much lost everything and realized that I could not afford to retire in the US. So I started taking various scouting trips looking for a place that I could retire. And I had not really had Spain on my list because I thought it would be too expensive. But I had a friend here because I was teaching English to speakers of other languages in the US, and he had been one of my students. And he's a fine arts professor and a performance artist in Madrid. And I wanted to go visit him. So I came to Madrid, and he showed me around Madrid. He took me to visit his parents in Sevilla, and in the garden of the Alcazar in Sevilla, I had this moment of, wait, this feels like how I wanted to feel. And I was in Spain for 6 weeks. And during that time, I met many of his friends in Madrid, so there's a lot of creative life there. I did an English immersion volunteering in Spain and made other friends that were professional people in Madrid. And I found out the cost of living was not that high. I could afford it. And the weather reminded me of Southern California of my youth. So I really liked that. And the wine, the food, I mean, what else? But mainly it was really easy for me to make friends. And I had made a lot of friends, like, I don't know, 12 friends by the time I left. And for me, friends are what you really need when you're going to go move to a new place. And Spain has this incredible joie de vivre that going out at night in cafes with your friends is very important. It's more important than your job. And so there's a lot of social life that I really enjoyed. So by the time I left, after 6 weeks, I was thinking, I should figure out how to move to Spain. And then I had a 7-hour layover in Dallas where I got the worst food poisoning I've ever had. By the time I got back to New Mexico, I was like, yeah, that's a sign. The universe ever sent you a sign. It was food poisoning in Dallas. Don't stay in the US, go to Spain.
So that was it, right? You were ready.
That was it.
Wonderful. And David, you moved around the same time I did some 15 years ago. So clearly Uruguay wasn't just a passing fling, more like a long-time love.
Yeah, well, I first came in 2006 when I first came to Uruguay, and I was in real estate at the time, and I was looking for an investment. And I worked with some real estate agents in Punta del Este where I was looking. And I worked in real estate in the US, and my lifestyle was I had a legal pad, and I see how many things I could do in 10 minutes and how many things I could do in the next 10 minutes. And I start early and I work late, you know, and worked weekends because that's what it took. And I was with these real estate agents, and we went to lunch, and it's like 30 minutes went by, 40 minutes went by, and I was starting to get a twitch because I never, what's going on here? You know, why aren't we back to work? Or what's going on? You know, so I think we hour, 15-minute lunch, we relaxed, they talked. And then I said, well, what are we doing Sunday? Oh, we don't work on Sundays. We knock off at 2 o'clock on Saturday, and we'll, you know, the world will still be there on Monday. And I thought, I like this. I could live like this, you know. So the importance of food, relationships. It wasn't all work, you know, and the way people's feelings are more important here. It's like, yeah, everybody wants to make money, everybody works, but there's other things too. It's, you know, what's going on with your family? How do you feel? Are you really enjoying your food? Is this, you know, let's go somewhere where it's good to eat. So that I was out of balance, and Uruguay introduced me to kind of a better balance of life. So that was really good. And then also, you know, it started like you start thinking I could do something different. And then once you get in that frame of mind and other things, you know, I always wanted to write. Maybe I could write, maybe I could do this, and maybe that could happen. So it kind of changed my perspective, and it opened up a lot of doors for me.
Very cool. And for many of us, you know, writing gives us the flexibility and the ability to really enjoy life. And, you know, we say, do we work to live or live to work? Well, we know which one we want it to be, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, everyone who's listening to us today we are going to discuss marijuana laws abroad, an increasingly hot topic, no pun intended. Many of our listeners may have doctors who've incorporated marijuana into their treatments. It's prescribed for a wide range of ills, from glaucoma to terminal illness. Some of you may simply be wondering what the rules are for recreational use abroad. While we cannot cover every country on Isles Beat here today, we can illustrate how more and more countries are considering and enacting legislation. And of course, you have the International Living website for all your queries. Let me start, though, with an important piece of advice. Before visiting any country, anywhere in the world, it's important to do a little research into any laws that might apply to you while there. Same-sex relations in Singapore, unlicensed drinking in Dubai. Know before you go. I must also add that while we'll be discussing what we've heard or observed in our adopted countries, we are not legal or medical experts, and you definitely need to verify any and all information with an official source. For example, your embassy or consulate in the country you plan to visit should be able to advise you. Okay, enough with the caveats. Let's start our discussion with you, David. First off, Uruguay is such a special case. It has a history of progressive lawmaking, does it not? Just in general?
A lot of things happen in Uruguay. They used to call it the Switzerland of the Americas. And Uruguay had like labor laws, like in Uruguay, every worker gets, like after you've worked a year, you get 20 days vacation with double pay to cover your living costs, and plus money so you can really take your family on a vacation. They have all kinds of paid holidays. Everybody has disability insurance. Everybody gets a retirement pension, no matter what your job is. And why that's, you know, in Europe and the US, that take that for granted. That was in Uruguay at the time or before it was in many US, before it was in the United States. And the women's right to vote, I believe, was before the United States. Same-sex unions were available before the United States. So it's been on the social front, it's adopted new things before the US in many cases, women's right to vote, all kinds of things. So it's kind of known for its progressive nature in that regard.
Interesting. And that probably affects, you know, for a lot of people when they're thinking about which country to move to, that probably is something that you want to take into account. How comfortable am I going to be, particularly if you're a member of the LGBTQ community? You want to know that you're going to be able to move to a country and what the laws are going to be, right?
Right. Be comfortable. Yeah.
Very interesting case, Uruguay. Now, Marsha, you've been in Spain for more than a few years now. How does Uruguay's progressive stance compare to what you've learned about Spain and observed in your time there in general?
Well, Spain is a very open-minded country, and it's in Europe, so it's democratic socialism, right? So we have a very strong social safety net with healthcare, pensions, unemployment insurance, which of course makes the country safer. Because when people have the social safety net, they're not worried that they're not going to be able to pay their bills. They're going to have unemployment, or they're going to have a pension. They're not going to go bankrupt from healthcare. So we have almost no crime, almost no violent crime. I mean, there's some pickpockets, but it's perfectly safe to walk home from a club late at night or something. Really, it's such a difference from the US. It's so difficult to have a gun here that no one has them unless you're a professional bodyguard. So that's a great thing. All the political parties that would be the equivalent of our Republicans and Democrats, because there's more than two here, there's several, all of them except for the very minority party on the extreme right, who are kind of outright Nazis. There's all of them embrace women's rights. All of them embrace reproductive rights. All of them embrace LGBTQ rights. Same-sex marriage has been here for a long time. So every party is what we would call in US political language liberal. Right. Spain is extremely LGBTQ friendly. It's a haven for LGBTQ people. And I think we're going to be seeing, we are seeing now more and more American expats in that. In Madrid, there's a whole neighborhood, Chueca, that has its own rainbow striped metro station. Barcelona is very friendly. Near Malaga, Torremolinos is the gay beach. Near Barcelona, Sitges is called the Fire Island of Europe. It's been that way for more than 50 years. So, you know, Spain is very, very open that way. And it's also very creative. In Barcelona and Madrid and Malaga, Valencia has one of the best art schools and one of the best film schools. I think that because Spain was under a fascist dictatorship of Franco until 1980, I think Franco died in 75 or 78 or something, and it took a couple of years to get a constitution. And then there was a period called the Movida, which was a decadent drug, sex, and rock and roll period. And then it became calmed down. And the people who are now artists are in their 40s, in mid-career, were people who were born after Franco. So during Franco, all the artists and intellectuals left Spain. Picasso went to France. You know, the people were gone. And now this new renaissance of creativity is just blooming in Madrid, Barcelona. You know, it's very fun.
Sounds like a really exciting time to be there, Marsha.
Yeah, I think I hit it right on the head.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately for Panama, I have to say, while some policies may seem very forward thinking, in other ways, we do tend to maybe lag behind other countries in the region. For example, Panama tends to rank among the top countries in the region for internet coverage, vaccine programs. I'm talking even pre-pandemic. But then we've had several marriage equality petitions go before our courts. The rights of women who don't want to have children are still being denied in some cases. Changes to local laws on marijuana, sex education have been proposed, but the courts in General Assembly do stall and delay in these areas. So we're not seeing movement in every area. You might expect more from a country that on the surface looks as modern as Panama does. With that said, let's lay out what we know specifically about marijuana legislation, our topic for today. Spain shares the Iberian Peninsula with Portugal, a country that made big headlines when it decriminalized, insofar as jail time is concerned, the use of all formerly illicit drugs in small amounts. So we're talking personal use. What about its neighbor, Spain?
Well, it's a little tricky in Spain. In Spain, it's legal to use it, to smoke it in your private home, at a party in someone's private home. It's illegal to buy it or sell it. It's illegal to smoke it in public on the street. You can have two plants, but they can't be in public view. Medical marijuana is treated the same as recreational marijuana in that sense. So the workaround is that there are these marijuana clubs. So you join a marijuana club, you pay a monthly fee, and you go to your club, which is a storefront that has no sign on it. And then inside, you are given the marijuana that you want. And you have to use it there. So usually inside the storefront, it's set up like a little living room. If there's a bar, you probably can have coffee. You can buy coffee and Cokes and maybe munchy sweet things, stuff like that. You're not supposed to take it out of your club. People do. And sometimes the police are waiting outside the clubs because they know where they are. So inside the club, it's legal. Outside the club, it's not. When you join the club, you have to be introduced by a member who has been in the club for at least a year. And at the time you sign up, I think they gauge your they ask you to estimate how much you think you will be using, and they gauge your monthly dues on that basis. And a lot of them grow their own, so they want to know how much they need to produce because they're trying to control quality. Okay. So it's regulated in that sense. They're pretty careful, and it's not for tourists. You have to show a residence card. And I have been in Barcelona where some guy on the street is saying, "Hey, do you want to smoke pot? You know, it's legal here. Come on, I'll get you into a club." That's probably a scam, because it's not for tourists, and tourists can't just go in a club and smoke. So, and then there's also illegal sales. There's guys you'll see hanging around the streets sometimes. I understand the quality is very, very low, and you're probably wasting your money on that. So
very interesting.
And lately, now I'd say in the past 6 months, there are stores selling CBD products everywhere, all over Madrid. And I was in Bilbao, and there was tons of them there too. So CBD, creams, like a hash, like teas, cookies, all that stuff. Very easy to get with CBD and legal.
Very interesting. And for our listeners who may not be as well versed in this, we've all been looking it up in preparation for today's talk. But the CBD versions are not, they I believe are thought to have no effect as far as affecting your perception of reality. So you're just getting some sort of medicinal, hopefully, use from it without getting any kind of mind altering.
They're supposed to be
versus THC.
Yeah, they're supposed to be relieve pain. I find they're more relaxing. They're good for sleeping.
Yeah, I'm hearing from a lot of people here that use CBD drops for anxiety and insomnia. Very interesting stuff. And what you've explained to us about Spain brings to mind Amsterdam. And I think for a lot of people from the US, maybe even Canada, the misperception is that it's completely legal and everywhere in places like Amsterdam, when in fact the coffee shops are regulated, very similar to what I'm hearing from you on the clubs in Spain.
Well, in fact, the coffee shops in Amsterdam are actually illegal, and that's why they're called coffee shops. But there's a police policy in the Netherlands of looking the other direction for businesses that are successful. So that's the same for prostitution, although that prostitution has recently been made legal in Amsterdam, but for a long time, it was just a look the other way thing. And that's what it is for marijuana in Amsterdam.
Something we encounter in different countries as well. Here in Panama, for example, for a long time, tourists from the US and Canada were given 6 month stays, even though the law says only 90 days. That is coming to an end. They will be enforcing the 90-day rule soon, but these are things that you encounter in different countries around the world. Great examples there, Marsha. Well, let's go over to across the pond to Latin America. In South America, Argentina made it legal for individuals to grow cannabis for medical use. Next, we heard that they would make marijuana available for free for certain patients. Next door in Uruguay, what's the situation, David?
In Uruguay, they made, actually, they say that they made marijuana legal, but it's actually, before they made it legal, it was pretty much unregulated. I mean, you see people smoking it on the street or in homes. and it wasn't an enforced thing. It wasn't, police didn't go looking for it. You know, if there was a car accident and someone was stoned, then they would enforce the law. They take out the rule book and say, hey, you know, you did this, you broke the law and you caused an accident, you'd be in big trouble.
Mm.
But they didn't go looking for, you know, an enforcement of that. When they quote legalized it, what they did is they actually regulated it. So there's 3 ways you can have marijuana. It's supposed to be for citizens and legal residents only, just like Marsha said, but I've never heard of it ever being enforced. So when people come, you know, if someone tries to sell you pot or something, it's not a trap. It's just a lot of people don't even know that it's supposed to be just for residents and citizens, but it is. It's supposed to be for residents and citizens. And they have like a kind of a personal use limit. So you can grow your own plants and it could be for recreational or medical. There's no distinction as far as its legality. So if you want to grow your own, you can grow up to 6 plants and supposedly consume no more than 480 grams in the course of a year. We have marijuana clubs like Marsha said, where you can get it. I think you can take it and come and go, but if you don't want to grow your own plants, you can join a club. And then from the club, each member is supposed to take no more than 480 grams during the course of a year. And if you don't want to grow your own and you don't want to bother going to a club, you can go to a registered pharmacy and you can just go buy it there, up to 480 grams in a year. So you can buy it at the pharmacy, you can grow your own, or if you want to do it socially, you can join a club. So you can pretty much do any way you can. Now, it went into effect. One of the things that happened is it went into effect, and they had some problems with it, and the main problem is the same thing you have with Coca-Cola. You see Coca-Cola advertised, and you see a soccer star drinking Coca-Cola, so people put it in their babies' bottles because they think, well, it must be healthy, or else they wouldn't be advertising it. So for people in the poor neighborhoods, the people who or haven't had the same, I don't know what it is, but they just don't know about those things. You see it, you'll see kids drinking Coca-Cola in a bottle and you're going, man, you shouldn't do that. And I've said, that's not good for your baby. They say, well, it's healthy. I said, well, what makes you think it's healthy? Well, all the athletes are drinking it,
Wow.
they take it as an endorsement. And the same thing happened with marijuana, where you had a lot of people, because it was legal, they took it as an endorsement of health. So you had a lot of women smoking a lot of pot when they're pregnant, thinking that, oh, this is probably good for my baby, or, this and that. So they started, they didn't change any of the laws about its legality, but they started having advertising campaigns where they said, hey, this is legal, but it's not healthful. For most people, it's not a healthful thing to do, and it's not good to do when you're pregnant. It's not good to do in these situations, things like that. So it's legal, it's still legal, but there was kind of that unintended consequence that they've kind of come back and addressed.
Very interesting, David. So, it might be something that can help with your pain if you have a painful condition, a terminal illness, but don't put it in the baby's bottle, please. You bring up a really important point, David, that living as we do in Latin America, myself in Panama, we do have a large portion of the population that doesn't have the same exposure and education. Panama, so progressive in so many ways, and yet we have one of the highest teen pregnancy rates because we don't have the sex education, the widespread sex education that when I was growing up in the States that we had in middle school. So very, very interesting, and something that we do contend with and read about in our local papers, right? Very, very interesting. The other thing that that you touched on that I also thought was very interesting, Uruguay being one of the first countries to just completely legalizing it and then having to pull back. So, for our listeners today, what we're saying today might change. Countries might tighten up restrictions. A lot of them are loosening restrictions, but you do need to keep checking before you go to a country and consume any type of drug that might be considered illegal. You want to make sure you know what you're doing, because not all jails are nice overseas. Okay, well, so here in Central America, we don't seem to be seeing any new legislation in Costa Rica. definitely one of the most popular destinations in this part of the world, as I'm sure you both know. But a bill to legalize and promote the hemp and medical cannabis industries has been stalled for over 8 months in Costa Rica. As for its neighbor, Panama, where I am right now, we had a similar such situation, but the latest draft law has finally made it past, the only one to make it past all 3 required debates in our legislative assembly here in Panama. And the bill proposes permitting only pill and liquid forms for medicinal use to be dispensed by pharmacies, but it has not yet been signed into law by the president, so it's not yet official. As of today, September 10th, 2021, we do not yet know whether or not the president intends to sign. If he does, you can be sure I'll write about it for International Living publications and social media. Definitely keep an eye out for articles by Marsha and David, who keep us apprised of what's happening in their parts of the world. Before I sign off, I just want to come back to you both really quickly one more time. And this is off the cuff, but could you tell me what do you say to people thinking of coming to your part of the world? And as far as how you feel, how free do you feel? What do you feel about personal freedom where you're living right now? Can we go to you, David, first?
In general, there's different things, like as far as bureaucracy and rules, there's a lot of bureaucracy. You know, you've got to getting a driver's license or transferring property. It's just as cumbersome, you know, opening a bank account. Those kind of things can be cumbersome, but where there's more freedom is between people. I'll tell you a quick anecdote. When I first moved to Uruguay, I was with a friend, and it was in Punta del Este in the winter, and there's nobody around, and the light was red, and I stopped at the red light. He goes, "Why are you stopping?" And I said, "Because the light's red." He said, "But there's not a soul in sight." And I said, "Yeah, but the light's red. We got to stop." And he said, "Was the light put here so people could get through the intersection safely, or were you put on Earth to obey a time machine?" And he thought that was nuts. And so that's kind of the thing. The rules. A lot of the rules, you have to the rules, what's the purpose of the rule? It's so people get along. It's so that if there's an accident or someone gets hurt, there's a way to figure out who has fault. But, you know, no one's going to you're not, you know, jaywalking or doing something. I mean, I'll be on the bus, and like 15-year-old kids get on the bus with beer, and there'll be policemen, and they'll wave to the policemen wave to the kids. And I'm like, you know, because in the US, they would all be in juvenile hall, you know, so people, there's a lot more live and let live in the social world than there is from where I came from.
And I agree with you. I find that there's more of a common sense approach to things like illegal U-turns here as well.
Right. And it's yeah, they're not out to make a quota. You know, the rules, they get out the rule book when something's happened usually.
Right. A lot more freedom as far as bending the law. If there's no one around, go ahead and make that U-turn safely. Going over then to you, Marsha, please tell us, what do you feel as far as your personal safety, your safety in Spain? What do you tell to people who might wonder about, if I feel like maybe I'm a little bit different, will I be safe there? Will I have freedom there?
Yeah, you couldn't be more safe and more accepted than you are in Spain. And it's the same approach to the rules. Like we have, you know, red lights for crossing the street, but if there's no cars, you just cross the street. I mean, you know, it's the same, you know, what makes sense. And I would say also that I think our police force, I grew up in Los Angeles and in the Chicano barrio, and the police were extremely racist. And I think throughout the US, we're seeing these demonstrations, Black Lives Matter, because the police are extremely racist. And that is not at all the case here. And in fact, the police are very, I wouldn't say friendly, but they're very polite, and they can be very firm. But, and also they're really handsome and fit, like really tight uniforms.
I know.
But it's like there's no danger of any kind of violence from police. The police really are there to protect you and help you. To me, that's a huge difference. So I'm, you know, I couldn't feel more free, actually. I do get some emails from IL readers sometimes who are like, I want to move to Europe because the taxes are in the US are too much. And I'm like, Europe is democratic socialism. The taxes here are higher than the US because that's what pays for the wonderful social safety net. You know, so if you want to avoid taxes, don't come to Europe.
Very good story. I have to tell you one of my own, Marsha, being a young, dumb kid, my first time backpacking through Europe, and my experience with the Spanish police officer, being with my friends, and we had maybe imbibed a little too much. And a police officer said, "Oh, hey, wait, you can't go that way." And he wasn't even trying to enforce a law. It was a bridge that I think was coming up to let a boat go under. And I took off running and fell flat on my tushy. You know, he was nice and he was cute and, you know, laughed a little bit and was like, you just can't go that way. But there was definitely no feeling that I was being targeted as a person of color, definitely no sense that I was in danger, just a nice, helpful guy. And here in Panama, I gotta say, I've never had an issue with the police here. Sure, it can happen, but I've never been pulled over when I wasn't actually doing something like speeding. And generally, I say, you're right, I shouldn't have been doing that. And they let me off with a warning. They're not trying to make a quota either. So as far as my ability to walk around free as a single woman, go out at night, I feel perfectly free to do that.
And there is a strong police presence, like in Seoul, the main square, or Lavapiés, which is the sort of hipster area. There are police cars parked and policemen standing next to them in the places where there's a lot of people and a lot of tourists, which is a comforting presence to me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We have tourist police here in Panama as well, and they help keep the tourist areas safe and give directions when you need them as well. Well, I have to thank you both so much for your very honest sharing today about everything we've discussed, freedom down to marijuana use in your countries. Let's keep an eye on what's happening around the world with that. And it's just been truly wonderful talking to both of you today. Thank you for your insights on this fascinating topic, David and Marsha.
Good seeing you, Jessica. Good seeing you, Marsha.
A pleasure, both of you. Let's talk again.
Yeah, we miss seeing each other live at conferences, y'all. So it's at least we can see each other through video. And to our listeners, there you have it. I hope you found this episode enlightening. What we do for you. And we thank you for listening. Until next time, please stay safe and remember to be kind and unwind. It's important. Take care.